On this episode of MotoringBox, we're going to be giving my AU Fairmont Ghia a little bit of lovin'. Let's go. Welcome back to MotoringBox. I'm Sean McKellar and this is my 2001 AU Fairmont Ghia, which I've had for about 2 years. And I've been accused of neglecting this car because my BA Falcon XR6 Turbo gets all of the best quality parts and all of the attention over the last couple of months, whereas this car has just been sitting idly in the background, crying out for a bit of love. But there are a few things on it, if I'm honest, which are starting to sort of come to the end of their lives, and one of them is actually the power steering pump on this car. It still works, the steering is still beautiful. It's one of the best steering cars I've ever driven, the old AU Falcon. But this pump is starting to whine a little bit, and especially when you're on a long sweeping turn with, say, 1500 to 2000 revs on the engine, the whine sort of just starts resonating through the whole car. So I've had a look at the fluid looks good, but a replacement power steering pump for one of these cars is only about 150 to 170 bucks from eBay. So that's actually what I have done. It's not the lightest thing in the world, but inside this box we have a new pump. And to give this car a little bit of a birthday, I've actually got a whole package here full of pulleys and a new drive belt. So that should really shut this thing up. It should return the engine back to being nice and smooth and quiet. So I've never done a pump before, so you're just going to come along for the ride. I'm not an expert, this is not a proper tutorial, but hopefully together we can work this out. I have actually flushed power steering on my old NC Fairlane before, and I did that by simply cracking one of the lines off the steering box. That allowed me to drain the whole system, so I'm probably going to do a similar thing today. Then we can get the drive belt off, get the pump off, get the new pump on, and hopefully fill the system and we'll be good to go. So firstly, let's get access to the pump and confirm that the replacement we have is identical. Otherwise, there's no point in draining the system or doing any of that. And we just need to get this little dressage kind of piece off the top. Dressage is with horses, isn't it? Anyway, whatever you call this thing. So here we have our replacement pump. I bought this off eBay. I believe it came straight out of China. But look, that shouldn't be a problem. Power steering pumps themselves are pretty simple beasts. They just wear out with time, so. I don't know if it's a particular brand or anything. I think it's just a no-name product. Look, they do have some tips here for bleeding the system. Shouldn't need those. Be gone. And let's have a look at our pump. So the pulley is steel versus plastic. So that is reassuring, but otherwise, the connections look to be in the same position. The bolt for the bracket looks to be the same as well. So yeah, I reckon, I can't really compare the diameter of that pulley, but it looks to be about the same. So I reckon we are good to go. So I suppose to start with, we probably need to get under the vehicle and try and drain the system. So I'll leave that loosened and yeah, let's see how we go. Now the cool thing about owning an AU Fairmont Ghia with the stock suspension is I can actually get under this thing without jack stands or without ramps or anything. So what I'm going to do is just loosen one of these power steering lines here. You can already see some fluid starting to come out. Shouldn't be any more than a litre or so in the system. So as I mentioned, this job is not urgent. The car still drives really well, but it's just trying to, look, give it a bit of love, you know? So let's just let this drain and then we can get to work back up top. So aside from this power steering issue and of course the faded paint that this car has, the only other thing this car is going to need soon will be brake discs and pads. So not sure when we'll do that. It'll be in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, it does see a lot of kilometers, this car, and yeah, no problems generally. Man, so much space compared to on the BA now too. Look, it still looks okay, but look, belts are so cheap and I do have a replacement, so we'll slam that one in. So our pump level is getting down there. It looks like the pump itself is empty. And then it's just a 17mm one here on the back. Yow, that hurt a little bit. Sort of crushed my finger between the spanner and the power steering pump. Lovely. So for the power steering lines, there is a rubber hose here with a little hose clamp on it. Should be nice and easy to get off. And the other one is a metal hard line, which we'll need another spanner for, I guess. Cool, tuck him out of the way. So apologies, you won't really be able to see this, but when you're doing the job, it is pretty self-explanatory. That was a bit more violent than I was hoping for. But luckily with this engine, there's a fair chance that the tools or bolts or whatever are going to fall all the way through to the ground, so that's always nice. So there's your hard line, there's a look at it. I think it's a 16mm, but that's the spanner I do not have. We'll get the rest of these bolts out now and we should be right for removal. It's loosening up beautifully now, which is good. Beautiful. So here's a look at what's happening here. I've got a bit of dripping fluid there, but yeah, I just need to rescue this socket which is jammed onto the bolt. Otherwise that's the lower bracket. There was a third nut down the bottom here, so 1, 2, 3, 1, 2 on the back. That's where the hard line connected, that's where the rubber hose connected. So yeah, that's it. Okay, so here we have the most satisfying part of the job, which is dropping in our brand new power steering pump. Look how shiny and beautiful that is. So yes, it's important to make sure the bolts you're using are the exact bolt you took out from that previous location, because some of them are different lengths. There we go, torqued up to Sean's strength. Cool, front's done. 2 nuts on the back. That's about as tight as I'm going to get it. Awesome, that should be good. So long as this all bolts up, that's 90% of the battle won. Yes, it does. So I'll screw that in by hand, and then we'll get our little rubber hose, which I'm not sure if you can see, but we'll put that on to the fitting right here. Beautiful. How awesome is it to work on an AU Falcon? It's just working with you every single step of the way. Existing hose and the clamp look fine, so I don't see any reason why we can't reuse it. Now we just need to use a shifter because again I don't have the right size spanner for this one. Make sure the shifter is as tight as can be. Yep, that should be plenty. So all we need to do now really is connect the line back onto the power steering rack, and this side of it will be done once we top up the fluid. But for now, let's move our attention to all of these pulleys on the front of the engine here. This one looks to be that one there. That one looks the same actually. Okay, that looks a bit better. That is clearly wrong, or that is for the power steering pump, I guess. So we don't need that. That's a bit of a useless kit. So look, that's not ideal, but at least we have a pulley for this one here. We've got the idler pulley here on the top right, and then I believe this one is hopefully the same. Looks to be the same as what's on the tensioner. So at least we can replace, well, it looks like we'll be able to replace everything except for that one there. If that last pulley is still making noise, then we'll just have to find a replacement on the internet. So that looks to be the same, which is good news. So let's put this on back on. I'll do a quick search as well to check for the torque rating. So a lot of this information is in the user manual, but I tend to just Google stuff. So it looks like it's 25 Newton meters for everything. That is not a lot of torque at all. And let's pull this thing out and have a look. So there we go. Interesting. So it looks like we've got the correct pulley for both of those. One's ribbed, which is that one. One's smooth, which is hopefully that one. But let's compare them and get it all swapped out. Let's compare these pulleys and make sure we are on the right track. So look, that one is a little bit thicker, but it does still fit. Actually, you know what? It fits up the same. So I reckon it's going to be fine. Yeah. Let's go with it. As long as it doesn't rub on anything on the front of the engine, we should be golden. Let's have a look at these first. The better thing would have been to put this in a vise, but I actually don't own a vise. I'll put it around that way, so let's just see how this one fitted up versus this one. Looks identical to me. So we'll see if we can get enough torque on this puppy to sort it out. We can. Cool. Awesome, done. All of these pulleys appear to be lined up, which is fantastic. So let's get our belt back on. Down under the alternator. And the reason that's so loose is because it also has to duck down under this thing. So that goes down under there. Then when we loosen the tensioner, that should allow us to do the last step, which is put it onto the power steering pump. Be careful not to put your fingers under anything, because if your socket or whatever comes out of the tensioner and your fingers are under there, Jesus, that would hurt. So it all looks as though I've nailed that first time. So we'll reconnect the power steering line onto the rack, we'll fill this thing up, and we'll start this thing up and see how she goes. Okay, we've got the line on the power steering rack tightened up again. So now we're going to go for a fill. So I'm using Penrite's HP 50 full synthetic power steering fluid. It does state here that it suits everything from an EF all the way through to a BF. So that of course encases the AU. Let's see how we go. I don't really know how much it needs. If we accidentally overfill this thing, we would just have to crack the line on the power steering rack, which is not the end of the world, but it would be nice to avoid that wastage if possible. Or you could just Google how many mils this pump and system actually needs. It's just reached the bottom of the cap, so I'll just go slowly, add a little bit at a time, because I've got the rest of the afternoon to do this. So this level has now pretty much reached the full cold line. So what I'm going to do is start the car up, and we'll go lock to lock a couple of times, and then we'll come back and check it. So in order to start this car, I will of course need to put that lead back on the battery as well. So what we're going to need to do, there are some bubbles in the fluid, but probably let the engine sit for a while, let the fluid sort of sort itself out, and then what we can do as well is take the car out for a drive. And I imagine we just need to keep checking the fluid level, making sure it's up to where it needs to be. And then after a while it should just settle down and we'll be done. And that's it guys, we are done. Now time will tell as to how well that pump performs over time, but it's sounding a lot quieter than the old one did, that's for sure. I really wish I turned the car on at the start of the job to let you listen as to what that sounded like, but I think we all know what a whirry, sort of a whiny power steering pump sounds like. The old one was definitely on the way out, it was on borrowed time, it still worked, but it just didn't sound good as it was doing it. There are some bubbles in that fluid still, but that's just because it's all been aerated, because there probably were some air pockets in the lines in the rack. Those pockets are now out, but the fluid is kind of all chopped up a bit and all bubbly, so over time that should settle. I'll come back tomorrow, have a look at the fluid, top it up if required, take it for a few drives, but I think it's going to perform well. So that's it, we're done. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, if you got some questions or comments, throw them in the comment section below. Hit like, hit subscribe, and also check out the comment section for all the people telling me all the things I did wrong. But I'm just a beginner, I'm learning, just like a lot of you guys, so you don't know, you don't learn until you give it a go yourself. So thank you very much for watching, have a good one, I'll see you next time.